We like to describe ourselves as specialists in urban regeneration in brownfield development. Brownfield involves redeveloping slums, old housing societies. We're dealing with people, fundamentally people who have aspirations to move to a better house, to a larger house, to break that cycle of intergenerational poverty. What really drives us is the fact that you're able to change the lives of these individuals. And over the course of the last 25 years, we've built a reputation for being respectful of the folks that we work with, the slum dwellers, addressing each and every one of their concerns and doing things in the right manner.
Arshad, thank you very much for being here today. It's a pleasure to speak to you. We are here in Mumbai. I'm very keen to understand a little bit more about DB Realty. You are currently working as a president acquisitions. We just had a lovely breakfast together and explaining me all about the organization. But I would like you to share, what does your company do? Tell a little bit about the history as well.
Sure. Thank you, Gustav. And welcome back to Mumbai. About DB Realty, we're a real estate developer based out of Mumbai. We're a publicly listed company. We specialize in what I describe as urban regeneration or brownfield development. What that means is that in a city like Mumbai, you have very little greenfield land available. Greenfield is just going out, buying an empty plot of land and developing it. A lot of the opportunity and development potential is in brownfield. So brownfield would be a slum, for example, or old buildings where there's a lot of FAR potential left in the land. So our expertise is in getting into these complicated brownfield projects, navigating the regulatory nightmare, and getting into a stage where we can bring in a co-developer, one developer, making them a partner in the project, and then jointly building the project alongside them. I'm happy to say that in this particular niche that we are in, which is being in the land development side of things, right, in Mumbai, we're the only listed company that does this, a very credible counterparty. The other companies that operate in this space are smaller. They're also very good at what they do. So for us, we've had the luxury and the opportunity to partner with all of the tier one branded developers. So that's a bit about what we do and how we're different from other developers.
Very interesting. You also have as an organization, do you have a different entity that does with hospitality as well? Am I right to assume?
Yes. Yeah. So we are in the process of demerging our hospitality assets into a separately listed hospitality company that'll be called Advent Hotels International. The company will be run professionally. There's an independent CEO, independent board. And the main purpose of that company will be to operate and invest in new hospitality assets. The rationale behind this merger and the split is that investors can now, this is a hospitality company. This is a commercial real estate development company. There's a lot of clarity for any folks who want to invest in the markets. I think for us, just being a land development company is a totally different skill set. The market rewards it ultimately differently, values it differently versus a hotel development company, right, which has a totally different valuation. So we didn't want to mix them, and we thought that we'd rather separate them and get value from each of our entities.
When you look at the India market as an opportunity, you have lived abroad, you have studied abroad, you have seen different opportunities out there as well, and you decided that your time and your energy, your youth should be spent in India. Why is that? Do you think the best opportunities would be here professionally, or do you also see regions in the world as good as India?
No, everything should be viewed from the matrix of the reward versus the risk and what the long-term opportunity can be in that particular geography region. So I actually, was in 2023 after having lived in the US for 4 years. I had studied for my MBA at Columbia, and then I worked in real estate private equity there for about a year. I decided to voluntarily come back, right? Life was very comfortable there. But I thought that by not being here for the next 15, 20 years, I would miss out on the most transformative period of India, which is not any different from what China went through, let's say, in the early 2000s or the late 90s. It's a very similar period. The population growth parameters are about the same. The average age of people in the next 10, 15 years will be about the same as what China was going through. But I think the most important underpinning is that we have two things working for us. One is we're growing at a very comfortable pace. We're growing at 6.5% to 7%. We continue to expect to grow at this rate for the next, decade or so, right? Very rare for an economy of this size to continue compounding at a 6.5%, 7% rate. that translates into more consumption, more money for the middle class to buy homes. But the other trend, which is very interesting, is urbanization shift in India is truly underway now. So what that means is right now only about say 34 to 35% of India is urbanized, and we expect that in the next 15 to 20 years, 56 to 60%. So we're talking about approximately 300 million people moving into cities in India, which is the largest migration of people from an area, from rural areas to urban areas globally, right? In China, when urbanization took place, it was controlled. They had a system over there where if you're, it's called the Hukao system, where if you wanted to move from one area, a village to a city, you needed a pass. So it was controlled migration, right? Ours is uncontrolled migration, and the quantum of it is massive. So why these two trends matter for housing in India is people moving into cities, they'll need a home. You have a rising middle class, they have money to spend. So the outlook, therefore, just secularly is super strong for India, for residential housing naturally, and then residential, commercial, hospitality are interlinked fundamentally. We can deep dive in the latter two. So broadly for investors, this is the time to be in India next 15 to 20 years. Again, I would say parallel that to being in China in the early 2000s. That's the best way to think about this opportunity.
It's a very good parallel, and I couldn't agree more. Let's talk about foreign investors that would like to deploy capital here in the region. When I speak to our members from the US or from Europe or from further Asia, I see a lot of them have been visiting India, talking to players in India, but they haven't made a decision yet. While on one hand, I believe that one of the reasons is because the global politics scenario and wars and trade wars are a little bit unstable. So global investors, they like to stability. Yeah. But I also feel that there are other challenges related to entering the market in India. How can these foreign investors find the right opportunity here? How can they be successful in finding the right project or the right partner to invest in India?
I would look at it again from two perspectives. The first is to think of the risk curve, right? So if you're a foreign investor, if you're an equivalent to a Blackstone or perhaps a slightly smaller private equity fund, you'd like to start with perhaps experimenting with debt, right? Credit, naturally, credit to developers, credit to other participants in the real estate ecosystem, if your capabilities allow for it, because that's fundamentally the lowest risk possible, right? If that gives you comfort, you get into, I would say, the acquisition of ready commercial assets. So you get into an asset that's tenanted, where the downside is fundamentally very little, right? And then you work to, you operationally improve the asset, or you hold on to it until you sort of understand the market. And I think that's when you really get a flavor of whether this is a market you want to be in. And I think naturally, as I discussed, you want to be here. And after you've achieved that level of comfort, you'd like to go and a bit further up the risk curve, and you get into ground up developments with a local partner, right? So the second part that I want to address is linked to the part on the risk curve, which is where we are. So ground up development. What I described to you is a journey that a lot of funds have gone through. You name it, GIC, Blackstone. They all started with the acquisition of commercial real estate. Some of them even started with debt, right? From what I understand, PAG, they're very active in the debt market today in India for real estate developers. Now they're looking to get into equity. So that's another example. But fundamentally, I think where the money is to be made is when you go higher up the risk curve, you get into a JV with a local developer, a local partner, which is, again, very important. There are very attractive IRRs to be made, or attractive yield on cost if you're more of a long-term holder. I'd like to give an example of Sumitomo Corporation in India, the very large Japanese conglomerate. From what I understand, they are the single largest source of FDI into India real estate today as we speak, and they've invested, or are in the process of investing, more than $2 billion US. And their perspective is to hold for the long term, right? They've invested in prime land parcels, ground up. They have a local partner who sort of guides them, but they're doing a lot of things primarily on their own. So I do believe that there's a lot of opportunity. Everyone's here, you name it, and the way you should play it is go step by step. As I mentioned, if you really are more of a cowboy, right, you can definitely get into a JV with the right local partner who has the expertise on the ground for approvals, for the regulatory aspects of things, and can guide you. And it's usually extremely worth the value add that they bring you to Yes.
Now let's go a little bit deeper on your business model. For someone who doesn't know how everything works in India, it looks very attractive because of the returns, probably are very interesting, but looks very risky as well. You're talking about slum redevelopments. You need to get approvals, talk to authorities, talk to the people living in the area. While it has a fantastic impact, and we were talking about this a little bit before here, in the life of those that
Yeah.
who go back to a proper a place to work, to live, is also very challenging for you guys, I suppose.
Yeah.
Can you guide us through how does it work step by step, please?
Sure. So, as I mentioned, we like to describe ourselves as specialists in urban regeneration in brownfield development. Brownfield involves redeveloping slums, old housing societies. We're dealing with people, fundamentally, people who have aspirations to move to a better house, to a larger house, to break that cycle of intergenerational poverty. You're doing, when we get into these projects, it's very sensitive, right? It's sensitive because you're dealing, again, with human beings fundamentally. The land aside, the land is sure valuable. You're dealing with, politics. You're dealing with a lot of, bureaucracy. So you need to, I would say, be very circumspect, be very tactful as you navigate your way through this to see where value can be created for us as well as the people that we are working with on the ground, the occupants of the slums on the ground, right? The government has a policy since the early 1990s to allow for private developers to participate in these slum redevelopment schemes. And, the returns are good, but what really drives us is the fact that you're able to change the lives of these individuals. And over the course of the last 25 years, I believe that we've built a reputation for being very careful, very respectful of the folks that we work with, the slum dwellers, addressing each and every one of their concerns, right? The authorities, the bureaucracy, following everything to the rule, right? And doing things in the right manner. And that trust has really helped us create a reinforcing cycle. So, there are large slum clusters available or wanting to be redeveloped by the occupants across the city. And a lot of, these folks approach us, right? So that goodwill has been created. So yes, the returns are good. It's very risky because there are a lot of unknowns. It's not a linear process. But over the last 25 years, we've developed comfort that we can navigate this process and help the folks on the ground, give them the housing that they really deserve, and also consequently and commensurately generate returns for our investors as well, right? So both aspects really drive us.
When you look at the key figures for India, the potential, we talk about demographics, urbanization, but what could go wrong? Is there anything that you could imagine that could go wrong?
The problem with India is that it disappoints both the optimists as well as the pessimists. So there are definitely pessimists who feel that something could go wrong, but undoubtedly they will also be proven wrong. And there are optimists who feel that everything will go right, but undoubtedly they will also be proven wrong. So what I'm trying to get to is that the GDP growth numbers that I've mentioned to you, right? We've seen those across a couple of cycles over the last couple of years. We're fairly confident macroeconomic and that things should be stable. I mean, the last couple of months, we've been through an internal conflict with geopolitical conflict surrounding our neighbors, then the geopolitical conflict in the Middle East. That hasn't really hampered our growth. And, it's all credit to the government and the Prime Minister for steering us through this. Their vision for the country is very long term. They're looking at 2047 as being a Vikasit Bharat, so developed India. And that kind of long range planning is what we're looking at. So maybe we have a year that's slightly below GDP, the average GDP growth, right? But long term, a democracy, a very vibrant democracy, I would say, strong institutions, free institutions, right? A very entrepreneurial, working class, socially responsible industry composed of builders, industrialists, etc. An amalgam of all this makes me very confident about the country over the next 20 years, and I don't expect to be again disappointed either way, even if we shoot our growth by a couple of percentage points sometimes. I think in the average we shall do very well because the checks and balances are very significant, and there's too many things at stake for anything to ever happen. So I'm quite confident in that situation.
Fantastic. Arshad, thank you very much. It was a pleasure speaking to you.
Thank you.
Hope to see you in Abu Dhabi soon
Definitely.
and at other meetings here in Mumbai as well.
Thank you. Thank you, Isel. Thank you very much.